From healthcare to banking, the banking industry was granted a couple of rare regulatory passes at year-end, including loosened restrictions on holding derivatives and a 2-year extension for banks to shed private equity and hedge fund holdings. Mary Thompson reports on what's ahead on the regulatory front for banks in 2015.
3.5 years after Dodd-Frank became law, a soon-to-be-installed Republican-controlled Congress is seen whittling away at parts of the massive Banking Reform Act in the new year.
I think where you'll see some peel back on Dodd-Frank and some unity will be around maybe raising the requirement as to what's a systemically important bank in the U.S. So the $50 billion may very well go to $100 billion.
Republicans want to ease regulatory requirements for mid-tier banks while keeping the regulatory focus on the big banks Democrats like Senator Elizabeth Warren never want to bail out again.
I haven't had anyone contact me and say what I'm really hoping for is that Congress will change the laws so the big banks can get a little more profitable. And if things blow up, the American taxpayer will pick up the bill.
All the rules requiring banks to hold more capital, liquidity, and to dial down on risk-taking have made banks safer, though potentially less attractive investments, according to PwC's regulatory expert, Dan Ryan.
Are you going to want to invest in a business that has to hold 30% of its cash in reserve for a future date?
In the near future, like the coming year, more rules on capital and risk-taking will be written, including the final rule on additional buffers for global systemically important banks, limits on a bank's credit exposure to other banks, and a minimum long-term debt requirement for big banks. Raising what's become the perennial question facing the industry: will the regulatory burden cause the big banks to break up?
If the bank investors stay with these companies, I don't think we'll see breakups. If the equity markets kind of dictate that valuations are too low and the breakup value is more, I think that's where you'll see that come in.
But with big banks still waiting for key rules to be written, being big is the easiest way to adjust to them. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Mary Thompson.